Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you this Wednesday evening. 833-482-5337 is our phone number if you want to join our late-night national conversation. 833-4-VALDEZ. Of course, I'm at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, and that is Valdez with an S at the end. And just about an hour ago, maybe an hour and a half ago, the House has voted to censor Adam Schiff. I always get tongue-tied there. He has been censured. Here, look at this. Adam Schiff has been censured by the House of Representatives for his role peddling the Russia hoax against President Donald Trump. Schiff also misrepresented the telephone call between President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky, which led to the first impeachment against the 45th president. So he's lucky that's all he's, being held accountable for. Now, this comes after a measure to fine Schiff $16 million failed after the protests of Democrats and Republicans like Thomas Massey and some others. So, and this is, again, according to the National Pulse. So we have a clip of audio from that. I want you to hear it. Listen to this.
Resolution 521, the House has resolved that the House of Representatives censures Adam Schiff, representative of the 30th Congressional District of California, for misleading the American public and for conduct unbecoming of an elected member of the House of Representatives. That Representative Adam Schiff will be forthwith present himself in the well of the House of Representatives for the pronouncement of censure. That Representative Adam Schiff will be censured with the public reading of this resolution by the Speaker. And that the Committee on Ethics shall conduct an investigation into Representative Adam Schiff's falsehoods, misrepresentations, and abuse of sensitive information.
To my Republican colleagues who introduced this resolution, I thank you. You honor me with your enmity. You flatter me with this falsehood. You, who are the authors of a big lie about the last election, must condemn the truth tellers, and I stand proudly before you. Your words tell me that I have been effective in the defense of our democracy, and I am grateful. Today, I wear this partisan vote as a badge of honor.
It's a badge of honor for Adam Schiff. Let me tell you, when you have a speech that's so cleverly crafted, that means you knew this thing was coming. And, of course, this was originally proposed last week by Representative Anna Paulina Luna, Republican from Florida. And it failed to get to a vote, but this week they got it done. And kudos to her and everybody that held Adam Schiff accountable for being a big fake, phony, and fraud, because despite what he's saying, and he sounds so good saying it, he's really good at this. And he really is good at always being blameless and, keeping his hands clean. And it's not me, it's them, right? That's how he always does it. But the reality is he constantly went to television saying, we've got the evidence, we've got the evidence, we've got this, we've got that. And despite all of this evidence that they said they had, there was no evidence. And we know that why? Because Mueller came up with nothing in his investigation, as did the guy from today. Help me out here. What's his name? Special Counsel Durham. I was drawing a blank. Thank you. So now Special Counsel Durham, he also had some testimony today. And boy, did they give him a hard time as well. Now, I find this interesting because it's amazing that the little bit that we do, right? And when I say we, I mean we the people, right? I think today this was a victory for we the people in the fact that in the annals of history, it'll always be recorded there in the congressional record that Adam Schiff was censured by the the House of Representatives for doing what he did, for misleading the public, for misrepresenting the facts, for just, screwing this up. For, he lied. He lied. I think they're being generous here. When I say screwing this up, I mean America, right? He's literally damaging part of the fabric of our country. And this is, in my opinion, this is part of why this is so egregious. So I'm glad that this happened today. But there was also testimony from Durham. And I want to get into that as well, because everybody wants to know what he had to say. They want to know why there were no additional charges brought. And I think he put out some of the information out there, but I know I was left still with the question remaining of why we didn't do this. And the inclination that I get is that he didn't feel that he was going to be able to bring the case that he may have wanted to bring. And being experienced with the bureaucracy in Washington and realizing that the Department of Justice is not entirely impartial, he brought what he could. He indicted a couple of people that he felt he could indict and get a conviction on, and he didn't, right? Even that didn't work. We saw how that worked out when Danchenko and the other ones took the stand, and it became a big issue, and it just didn't work. So the swamp won that round. But the people need to hear from Durham. We've got a number of clips from him. Plus, we're going to connect with the former chief of the criminal division in New York for the Department of Justice, Doug Burns. He's going to join us to give his opinion, his analysis on what Durham was saying in today's hearing. And again, he didn't get to say a ton because some people were just cutting him off. All right, we got one clip. I think we have time for this one before we go for the first pause. This is John Durham, and he's at a hearing today, and he doesn't even get a chance to really speak, right? Because they just keep going and going. Clip number 5, this is Representative Hank Johnson interrogating Durham, not giving him a chance at all. Listen to this.
And none of the individuals you prosecuted were ever charged with being part of a hoax or a fraud or a witch hunt or a politically motivated deep state conspiracy against Donald Trump. Isn't that correct?
I would not say that that's accurate.
You mean you did charge somebody with being a part of a hoax?
We charged Mr. Sussman with having knowingly provided false information to the FBI regarding Alpha Bank.
But he was acquitted, though, right?
Well, that wasn't your question.
Mr. Sussman was acquitted after you charged him, correct?
Grand jury found
he was found innocent by a unanimous jury of 12.
That's not true.
Well,
what's true is the grand jury found probable cause to indict Mr. Sussman.
A jury of his peers acquitted him, though, correct?
And a trial jury.
You're not going to disagree on that, are you, Mr. Durham?
I'm going to try to answer your question as soon as asked.
Well, let me ask you this.
All right, as you can see, Hank Johnson wants it his way and won't allow the facts to come forward. Again, this is typical Washington BS. We see it all the time. But this is how he was treated on Capitol Hill. So it comes as no surprise to me that if he were to really try and bring an indictment where he brings down everybody from Barack Obama to Joe Biden, I mean, could you really imagine if that were to ever happen? It won't happen. And that's why. Because you can barely get to the lackeys that are on the outskirts of this that are doing the dirt and doing the damage without experiencing acquittals because they end up getting tried in the swamp. So we've got our hands full, as they say. We've got our work cut out for us. Anyway, more to come straight ahead on this and everything else. Doug Burns is going to join us. Our phone number, if you have a question or a comment, 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And it's not just in the halls of Congress where you hear a lot of BS being flung around. It happens all over the place, and there's malfeasance and self-dealing and wrongdoing going on no matter where you look. An employee of the world's largest asset management company, BlackRock, was caught on tape describing how the company attempts to stay out of the media spotlight while buying politicians and profiting off of war. And that's according to undercover footage obtained by O'Keefe Media Group, OMG. Of course, O'Keefe Media Group is headed up by James O'Keefe, who's, if you've listened to this program, you've heard him before, who's a fantastic guerrilla journalist and is one of the, I would say, the premier modern-day Nellie Bly type journalist out there that's really getting into things and letting you know exactly what's going on. And we've got James O'Keefe with us, but I want to give you a taste of some of what he uncovered. We have a short clip of what one of the BlackRock employees, a recruiter, had to say. Listen to this.
They don't want to be in the news. They don't want people to talk about them. They don't want to be anywhere on the radar.
Why not?
I don't know, but I suspect it's probably because it's easier to do things when people aren't thinking about it.
All of these financial institutions, they buy politicians. You can take this big ton of money, and then you can start to buy people.
I work for a company called BlackRock.
Meet Serge Varley, a recruiter at BlackRock.
All right, and there you have it. Good old Serge got caught with his proverbial pants down. James O'Keefe, founder of O'Keefe Media Group. How are you, sir?
Hey there, Rich. Great to be with you, and it's good to hear your voice.
Likewise, brother. So this is an amazing story that you got here. You always seem to get into the deepest, darkest places and find the most corrupt people saying the truth. Tell us how you stumbled upon this one.
Well, I can't tell you everything how we got it, but one of our brave investigative reporters met with this person a few times. We've been on this sort of Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street beat, trying to expose what's really going on because, I got wind of the fact that Pfizer and Fox, I looked at the ownership and the majority stakeholders in these companies almost mirror each other, with 18% of Fox Corporation being bought by BlackRock. So we decided to take a look and had a few sources, and we decided what better place to start than the gatekeeper, the self-described gatekeeper recruiting operations inside these companies. Who are these people that make these decisions? So we spoke to a guy who worked for JP Morgan, then Citadel, now BlackRock. His name is Serge. And he says some crazy things that don't surprise any of us, but will, I believe, wake people up.
And you know what's interesting here is that, again, most of us are living our lives. We don't, wake up today and go, I wonder who owns the top media corporations, or if the biggest pharmaceutical companies have the same type of ownership structure or investment structure as other. But the reality is there is some overlap, and these people are pulling the strings and controlling what happens at a global scale. And it's fascinating to hear somebody that's on the inside brag about it as if it's all good. So if you walk us through it, I know we had the clip and we heard him saying that, we can buy the politicians. What was, the money shot for you?
It was a few things. I mean, the fact that he was talking about, war is good for his business. The Ukraine war is good for BlackRock because the grain the silos are being bombed by Russia, and then there's volatility in the market. That's probably not surprising, but I think it's eye-opening. The fact he said you could buy a senator for $10,000, that seemed rather cheap to me.
I thought it was very cheap.
But he said it doesn't matter who. It's very cheap. But he's not wrong. I mean, it's true that the influence that these institutions have, and the fact that he says they're all in my pocket, and the way he says it, he's almost villainous in how he does it. It's evil. It's dark. It's narcissistic. It's filled with avarice and greed and power. It's everything that you think you would see in a Wall Street executive. He says he decides people's fate. He says it's not who the president is, it's who's controlling the wall of the president. And war is real effing good for business. So to see this guy talk about the power that he has over people and the culture of BlackRock, some people say, well, that's just one guy, mid-level guy. They always say that about my stories, that these are just mid-level people. It's only one person. It's like, well, how many instances do you need to see? And I think to expose the collective, you have to expose the individual. You have to reveal something to show anything. So I think this is a start for us, and it's inspiring other people to come forward.
Well, and, to your point you just made, I think it's important to underscore that, somebody could try to attack your journalism by saying this is a, mid-level guy or whatever and what have you. But the reality is the high-level guy has way much more to lose and is usually way better at being rehearsed and making sure they don't say these things, and they're super careful, and they use burner phones and all that. So oftentimes it takes somebody who's a little bit less savvy to tell the truth and get caught telling it, where voila, they end up on video.
I mean, if I caught the CEO on tape, maybe I will. People would still say it doesn't matter. But rather than say rather than say that it's a low-level guy, they'll say, well, nothing will happen to him, so it doesn't matter. It's like, I think people bask in their cynicism and their hopelessness because that's their comfort zone. I think it's psychological for people out there, even people that agree with what we're doing. I think they feel better about themselves by saying it doesn't matter, maybe because they don't do it themselves. But it does matter. And the reason it matters is because if it changes one person, I was talking to Alex Stein tonight on his show, if it just changes one person's mind or one person's heart, it really does matter. I mean, we all make a difference in various ways. Not everyone has to do what I do. Some people just raise kids or they're a teacher. We need good teachers. I don't think there's very many good teachers, but there are some. I mean, everyone makes a difference. So I know why it matters, not because the video got tens of millions of views and it's got 300,000 tweets and it's trending. That's not why it matters. It matters because it's now inspired other people to come to me today inside BlackRock. That's why it matters, because it empowered other insiders to message James O'Keefe and OMG and say they want to give us information. It inspired them, and that matters.
Right. And you know what? I think that's an excellent point as well. And you've seen this happen when you went inside of Twitter and you got whistleblowers from Twitter, you got whistleblowers from Facebook, and inside the federal government. Oftentimes, it's that catalyst that people need to say, wow, they went out there and they did that. Look at the brass set on this person. I want to do that too. And it does inspire people to go out there and make a change. Now, if people want to make a change, let them know. Where do they go? Where do they find you? How do they get involved?
They just go to O'KeefeMediaGroup.com. There's our contact form. You can go to Signal. The number is in my the number is actually in my bio. If you're listening to this show, you can actually just go ahead and go to any of my social media bios. Signal number is 914-315-9415. That's 914-315-9415. You can DM me. I mean, it's easy to get in touch. I think people are afraid to do so because they think the feds are monitoring and watching and observing. And
they're probably right.
They're going to be afraid to get audited. And people say, yes, of course, but they're not going to audit 100 million people. You got to conquer your fears in this country, because otherwise we can't do the right thing, and we can't turn the tide. And I think we're reaching a turning point right now where people are waking up to it. And I hope that they continue coming to OMG.
They do. James, stick with us. I have another clip that I want to play for you, and I want people to get a really good sense of exactly how they can help your movement. So we'll be right back, folks. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ is the number. Don't go anywhere. Our guest is James O'Keefe. We're coming right back.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Who's the president? Who's controlling the wallet? So it's
and who's that?
The hedge funds, BlackRock, the banks. These guys run campaign financing. Yep, you can buy your candidates. Obviously, we have the system in place. First, there's the senators, and these guys are cheap. You got 10 grand, you can buy a senator. I can give you 500K right now. No questions asked.
Yeah.
He says, first, there's the senators. You got 10 grand. You can buy yourself one. Folks, welcome back. We're on with James O'Keefe. And this is Serge Varley from BlackRock just bragging about what's going on. I saw one report that said he asked the undercover journalist from OMG, O'Keefe Media Group, if, in fact, she was undercover. And he said what he said anyway. James O'Keefe, welcome back. How do you square somebody asking somebody, hey, you're not undercover, and then going ahead and saying what they say anyway?
You know, I square it the following way, Rich, that people, it's sort of outside their experience when they're sitting down with someone that person could possibly be getting the best of them, that person could be a covert, undercover person. We've seen this time and time again to say, you're not an undercover journalist, are you? Okay, fine. Then I'll tell you about the secret, the evil deeds. It's just so outside of their experience. But this guy actually said right around that point, he goes, this is so beyond people. I thought the most profound comment by the BlackRock guy in the video that we just released was him saying this is beyond people's understanding. It was like this narcissistic attitude that people can't understand what he's saying, or they don't want to. They're asleep. I thought that was a really profound thing for him to say, because he's right on some level. I think the vast majority of people, not maybe the vast majority, but a substantial minority of people are. But I think he was wrong on another level, because I think people are waking up to it, and his words will help people do that. So that was a really important comment he made right there.
Yeah, and I also think he said, you know, he mentioned that he asked because regular people don't, or normal people don't care about BlackRock, or don't give a crap about BlackRock. And I thought that's probably a very true statement, right? I think most everyday Americans are like, what's BlackRock? And if you know, it's probably because your company invests in BlackRock in one way or another, and that's how you know. Now, James O'Keefe, I know that you've been on before and we've talked about this, but I think it's always good to remind people that, you know, you started this entire enterprise of guerrilla journalism, you know, out of your basement in Bergen County, New Jersey, and actually started in Rutgers University, and you've taken it nationwide, built it to the top, did it again, and here you are continuing to make strides and make waves and expose the truth, which I think is important. And I think that's inspiring in and of itself. But for those that, you know, are, whether they're retired or they're 18 years old and they're looking at this and they're listening to the show right now and they're saying, man, I want to get involved. I want to make a difference. How do they, you know, make that contribution? If they, not everybody can be an undercover journalist, but everybody can do something. What's the website?
Website is O'KeefeMediaGroup.com, O'KeefeMediaGroup.com. And people, Rich, they often say, James, how can I help you? Well, you can certainly help by supporting us financially, and please do that. Whatever, it's $10. We'll give you a month subscription for $10, and it'll be valuable to you, because you'll get courses on how to do what I do, which if will not inspire to go do it, will certainly entertain you. But I think the better question is, how can you help yourself? Like, if you just say, what can I do to help me expose? It's like, well, why don't you go out and try to do something? I mean, even if it's go to your school board meeting. I went to, Rich, you're from New Jersey. I'm from New Jersey. I went to my Bergen County, Westwood, New Jersey school board meeting, and I just walked up to the microphone, and I actually don't get scared. Literally, I like confronting people, and I'm calmer doing that than when I'm just living my life. But going up to that microphone in the school board meeting, even I got butterflies. So
I bet
you guys can do that. You guys can go do that in your local municipalities. You can start there and see how it goes. It's low risk. Just say hello, identify yourself, speak your mind. It's a start.
Absolutely. Well, James O'Keefe, I want to thank you for being here. Folks, give him a follow on all of the social media. It's James O'Keefe, III for the third, James O'Keefe, III. And one more time, give him the website or that signal number.
That's O'KeefeMediaGroup.com. If everybody just donates right now, supports us, we can keep doing these stories on BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street and find out who's really behind this in our country. It requires independent investigative journalism. I promise you I will never stop, and no one tells me what to do, so please support us. Thank you.
All right, folks, you heard it. Put your hand in your pocket. Send him a couple of bucks. James O'Keefe is out there fighting for the truth, and we've got his back. James, thanks for being here. All the best. Godspeed.
All right, take care.
You bet. All right, folks, your calls and more are coming up straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. Going to your calls and more. Let's see. What do we got here? Doc, Wilmington, Delaware, WDEL. Doc, welcome.
Rich, you are a patriot and an American patriot, and you're a voice in the wilderness, and I salute you, sir.
Thank you. Likewise.
You're worth the successor to Jim. So is Mr. James O'Keefe. As far as my state of Delaware, I call it smellware. It's like a fish that rots to the head. I just want your
You're right. The fish always rots from the head.
I just want listeners to know that the greatest money laundering case in American history was with Wells Fargo. It took place in an office right here in Delaware. I know people that knew of it. They were powerless. The man who exposed it, the whistleblower, was ruined. He had to take his case out of state to Philadelphia in federal court, where he won a major whistleblower case in the tens of millions of dollars. And Wells Fargo was fined billions of dollars by the federal government for money laundering, but nobody was put in jail. That's the way this country runs. That's the way this state runs. Mr. O'Keefe should investigate the entire state of Delaware's financial system, including our Chancery Court. He would find, as they say, high dudgeon in high places.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because you're talking about something that happened a long time ago. But we don't have to look that far back, right, Doc? There was some crazy stuff that just happened yesterday, where we saw that Hunter Biden's getting away with a whole lot, and nobody seems to bat an eye. In fact, everybody's kind of, on his side of the aisle, everybody's kind of like, yeah, no, this is a big deal. Can you believe they're even charging the guy? They seem like so shocked. And on the other side of the aisle, they're saying, I can't believe they're only charging him with that. And I don't think anybody will ever be happy. But it is interesting to see how Hunter really kind of got a pass, Doc.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. It's interesting to me that they didn't charge him with money laundering. They were investigating him for 5 years for money laundering, but he never ended up getting charged with it. Now, again, there's the reality that perhaps they investigated him for money laundering. They found that he didn't launder any money. All he did at worst was not pay $100,000 in taxes, and that's what they're charging him with. But I just find it so interesting that, they investigated Trump for a lot shorter period and went all in, right, on the current indictment. So it does seem like it's if two is the number, a two-tiered system of justice, that who knows, they might add more tiers as the days go by, right, Doc?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You got it, Doc. Thanks for the call. And giving Hunter Biden a diversion program, and we talked about this with Kash Patel when he was on last night, is odd for someone, from what Mr. Patel pointed out, that isn't currently on drugs. Now, he was clearly involved in an addiction issue and maybe still struggles with it, but as far as we know, he's clean. And the idea of these diversion programs is to help people that are in the midst of their addiction so that they can get the treatment that they need. So, I'm reading a piece in the New York Post. It says that they find this particularly insulting to the intelligence of all of us, we the people, right? The American people, because Hunter's no longer an addict. having attended treatment and taken up painting, and he still has business deals, and he's making money again. But we're going to treat him like a junkie that they picked up in a drug sweep. This is from the article. And everyone's going to pretend that this is about addiction rather than corruption. The Justice Department continues to refuse to confirm what it means by ongoing investigation, but it hasn't often used this claim when it's refusing information with Congress. Again, this is a piece by Jonathan Turley. Very good piece. I recommend it. So he goes on to say, there is reason to be suspicious. First, no one can explain why it took 5 years for the investigation of 2 minor tax counts and a gun allegation that could have been confirmed in a month. Indeed, an IRS whistleblower alleged that Hunter was given preferential treatment and that the whistleblower's team was removed from further work on that case by the Department of Justice. And we heard from that whistleblower. He was a guest on this program after testifying on Capitol Hill. Hunter also never faced any charges after videotaping himself engaged in interstate violations involving a host of prostitutes and drugs. That's now simply just material for his scrapbook. Matter of fact, the front page of the New York Post has a picture of Hunter Biden in the nude, by the way, holding this gun. And this, I think, is particularly problematic if they're charging him with lying on the application for being an addict and still obtaining a firearm. So I just think it's an interesting thing, the way that he gets off with this, a little bit of a media frenzy for a few days in June, late June at that, and Manafort and so many others, they really got beat up, right? They literally got dragged out of their homes. Just fascinating to me, honestly. It really is. Anyway, we're going to continue with your calls and more straight ahead. The telephone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Or if you prefer to get at us online, I know some people do. I always look at the comments, whether they're positive or negative. I look at them. I don't get to respond to everybody, but I do look at them. And there's a user, I forget the name that they're using online, but every day he says something like, please do an interesting show today because you're so boring. He entertains me. So I appreciate your critique, and I'm hoping the show meets your standard. And honestly, I'm not hoping that. If it does, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. There's a lot of options out there, but we're definitely the largest, and we're live and taking your calls. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Do these cases reflect a different standard of justice depending on political leanings?
So, as I said, from the moment of my appointment as Attorney General, I would leave this matter in the hands of the United States Attorney, who was appointed by the previous president and assigned to this matter by the previous administration, that he would be given full authority to decide the matter as he decided was appropriate. And that's what he's done. And if you have any further questions about that matter, you should direct him to the U.S. Attorney to explain his decision.
All right, that's Attorney General Merrick Garland. And he's saying, again, he isn't saying no, right? Does this concern you that there is a two-tiered system of justice? I would say, no, I'm not concerned because there isn't one. But no, he doesn't say that. He goes into this whole soliloquy of blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And you heard him say it. I'm not going to repeat it. But fascinating, right? Merrick Garland won't answer the question, but goes on to his own response in many ways. Fascinating. We look at the Hunter Biden, the two counts of not paying your taxes, and an allegation of lying on an application for a gun. Nothing about the Foreign Agents Registration Act, where he was working as a foreign agent, right? Again, and this is what they went after Manafort for. Yet nothing for Hunter Biden. And again, Paul Manafort, maybe back in the Nixon era, he had some access, but he wasn't meeting with the vice president or the president of the United States the way Hunter was. Hunter had a lot of access, right? His dad was vice president at the time, and his dad's president right now. So clearly, you tell me who's got more influence, who's got more access, Paul Manafort or Hunter Biden. To me, the answer is clear, right? It's Hunter Biden. Anyway, it wouldn't have taken, according to Turley, it wouldn't take 5 years to establish this crime because it was done in way less time with Manafort. However, Hunter seems to have just been given a pass. And this is what was likely the greatest concern for the White House. So the most notable omission of the indictment against Hunter Biden was the failure of any apparent investigation into the expanding scandal surrounding the influence peddling, the whole operation that's run by the Biden family. Despite the release of the evidence of the House Oversight Committee showing potentially millions of dollars transferred to Biden family members from foreign sources, Attorney General Merrick Garland has blocked any appointment of a special counsel. Nothing. Nada. Zilch. And why Turley posits this refusal has continued even with references that to President Biden as the big guy who was supposed to receive a percentage of the deals and the recent disclosure of bribery allegations by a trusted FBI informant. So why? What's going on here? We all know what's going on here. Everybody's getting a pass. I mean, again, innocent until proven guilty, clearly. Are we going to get to see Hunter proven guilty? We won't, because he's accepting guilt on lesser charges. He's gotten a great plea deal. And it's again, I know that is in the MO of the Department of Justice. That's how they roll. That's how they keep those conviction rates high. But according to those who are or were in the employ of DOJ and worked as prosecutors, from what I'm hearing, nobody gets deals like this. So we're going to continue that conversation into the next hour. We're also going to circle back and talk about what's going on. I don't mean circle back like Jen circle back Psaki, silent P. I mean, we're going to circle back to the Durham testimony because the Durham testimony today was, again, not a big surprise to me, and I don't think it's a big surprise to you, but overall, I think it was telling. It was telling to see how they treated him and how they really just didn't give him a chance. But we do have a couple of clips of him doing what he does, laying out the facts and trying to set the record straight. And I wish he would have done better. I wish he would have had more success. But we're going to delve into that momentarily. So if you want to join that conversation, feel free. Our guest is going to be Doug Burns, former chief of the criminal division at the Department of Justice in New York. And the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Give us a call, or you could just chime in online at Rich Valdez with an S on all of the social media. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you. Hour number 2 on Wednesday evening. If you want to join our late-night National Town Hall Forum, I invite you to do that right now. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And Congressman Adam Schiff was censured by the House of Representatives today. His colleagues in the House voted to do so because they felt that he had misled Americans throughout the Russia investigation, lying and saying that he had evidence that Trump was a Russian asset. And this evidence clearly never came to light because both FBI Director Mueller, in his role as the special investigator or whatnot, and Special Counsel Durham in his most recent report, both concluded that this was the product of Hillary Clinton, her campaign for president, the law firm that she hired, I don't know what to call him, former spy, MI6 spy, Christopher Steele, who put together a dossier of internet reports from fake news sources that made stuff up about Trump that wasn't true. And that was really it. And all I could think is, wow, it was that easy to try and fool most Americans. You know, and I mean, literally, these conversations, they go from, but he's a Russian agent to, well, you know, Manafort had a conversation about polls with somebody. I mean, it's amazing how, you know, it's a leap from here, a leap to there. It's just, it's interesting to me. But anyway, that's what happened with Schiff. Of course, there's other news. The Fed is now predicting that they will continue to raise rates, maybe not just this last one that they took a pass on, but they say we're not out of the woods yet. There's been a vote to impeach President Biden, pushed by Representative Lauren Boebert. Kudos to her. However, Speaker McCarthy is not backing that impeachment vote. We'll get to that a little bit later on because I'm wondering why. And I could have a lot of speculation as to why, but that's that. And also, the search continues for the people that were on a submarine looking for the Titanic, and lamentably, they're still missing. News reports are saying they have just a little bit of oxygen left. I can't imagine anyone coming back from this, and I don't mean to insult anybody who might know somebody on there. This seems like it's a done deal to me. I hope I'm wrong. And, of course, John Durham. John Durham testified today in not behind closed doors, but in an open session in Congress. And we have a couple of clips of that audio. I want you to listen to the first clip. This is John Durham at the hearing today saying there was no collusion or conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia. Listen to this.
To date, has any evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia ever been uncovered?
I mean, there is information, obviously, in the report that was prepared by Director Mueller and whatnot. But as to collusion or conspiracy, I'm not aware of any.
And let me stop you. When the FBI opened Crossfire Hurricane, that's the issue at hand, it did not have any information that anyone in the Trump campaign had ever been in contact with Russian intelligence officials. Isn't that right?
As we wrote in the report, we talked to the director of the CIA, the deputy director of the CIA, the director of NSA, and people within the FBI, and there was no such information that they had in their holdings at the time they opened Crossfire Hurricane.
Well, there you go. That was part of how he opened his hearing today, and his testimony, rather. And I think it's interesting. But they continued. And I want to get a sense of what this looks like from the other side, right? Not from my critical eyes here on the radio, but from somebody who's worked as a federal prosecutor, who was chief of the criminal division in New York. Doug Burns, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Rich. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So let's get the skinny on this. I mean, I think it's pretty cut and dry here, but I think the reason that we're having this oversight hearing, I don't believe is political theater. Well, I think some might think that. I don't think so. I think that they're doing this because obviously there's a report, right? And everything that Durham had to say, he would put into the report. The bigger question is, in looking at the report, we see that he indicted Mr. Sussman and I think another person, but he didn't indict anybody else that many of us thought should have been indicted. And the question that we take from all of this is, was he afraid, or did he have any reason to believe that he could not have brought the case? Now, I surmise in looking at what he did with Mr. Sussman, where it looked like he had the intention and the evidence to bring a prosecution that I believe he intended to secure as a conviction, but it didn't work. So do you think that's part of why he didn't bring any others, because he thought that he wouldn't get a fair shake in a D.C. courtroom, or is there more to it?
No, it's a very good question. Some pundits and experts are saying, Rich, that he was potentially hamstrung a little bit by Maine Justice, Department of Justice. I don't sign on to that 100%. Because the counterpoint to that is that, he still could have gone ahead and tried to subpoena, Comey and Strzok and all of them, the whole cast of characters. The Sussman thing, I think the listeners will find interesting. I mean, it jumped right out to me in 2 seconds that's what's called jury nullification. One of the jurors said, we felt you shouldn't have even brought this case. I mean, they were in a very, very hostile hornet's nest sort of environment, and the verdict reflected it. I'm disgusted, frankly. Maybe that's a little strong when I hear the politicians say, and there was an acquittal. I mean, they have no idea what they're talking about, with all respect, Rich. The point is, it was a hostile jury pool environment, et cetera, et cetera. But that begs the question on your very good question is, why didn't he go forward on these others? I really can't answer that, but I find it interesting that, both sides of the spectrum are upset with him. The right does have every right to be upset with him. He should have been more aggressive. I mean, one expert who I know, Brett Tolman, he was saying that, when they picked him, they knew he wasn't the type of personality. And you saw it today. He is a little bit restrained and sort of laid back. So Brett's theory was, they picked him knowing full well that he wasn't going to really start butting heads and, cracking skulls type of thing. And, maybe that partially explains it. But again, there's no reason whatsoever that those who lied up and down shouldn't have been more aggressively pursued, in my opinion. Just no question about it. And then on the main thing, I like what you said, because you were really onto something, and that is that what's much more troubling right now in our society is not that you have two crystal clear manifestations of the fact that there was no collusion, period, okay? And by the way, it was started, by a political candidate. And on that score from 30,000 feet, you can have political dirty tricks all day long between politicians, but once you bring in law enforcement and their credibility to try to sell it, and the media and their supposed, albeit declining credibility, then you got real problems, because you've got the media and law enforcement running interference. So even today, and this was your point, what they do is, it's like a magic trick, okay? It's like David Copperfield. They cherry pick a point. Wasn't there a phone call in the Trump Tower? Are you kidding me? You have a 300-page report, okay, that painstakingly goes through everything and shows that there was no collusion, but let's cherry pick a phone call. I like Durham's answer on that, actually. He said, well, you're familiar with that, aren't you? Because Schiff himself received a phone call. Everybody remembers, the fake
from the
Russian phone call. Yeah, exactly. And he was buying it hook, line, and sinker and all of that. But the point is, to me, my takeaway is this. I've been going to courts for 38 years now, and I think people find this interesting. And when we go to court, each side makes a calm and reasoned presentation to a judge or a jury, and we lawyers can tell, no matter which side of the case we're on, we can tell which side has the better side of it, the better argument. And in this matter, there is absolutely no question whatsoever that the thing did not have legs, there was no collusion, There was no conspiracy. Nobody was a Russian agent, okay? And the fact of the matter is, to see this little political theatrics, I agree with you that it's not political theater, the hearing, but when you have these little 5-minute speeches, and you can tell,
all theater.
Yeah, you can tell whether it's a D or an R without even looking, obviously, when you hear them talk. It's completely unproductive, okay? And as I was telling my wife, Joanne, it's interesting, I'm sure a lot of people say, well, wait a minute, why don't they just do some work on behalf of our country instead of all this petty bickering 24 hours a day?
Yeah. Well, I'd love to get to that point too, Doug Burns. Folks, Doug Burns, former federal prosecutor with the Department of Justice, chief of the criminal division in New York, discussing the Durham hearing today. We have more clips of audio that I want to go over with Doug in limited time. So if you want to get a call in, now's the time, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337. We're coming right back with Doug Burns.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So then, was there adequate predication for the FBI to open Crossfire Hurricane as a full investigation?
On July 31st, in my view, based on our investigation, there was not a legitimate basis to open as a full investigation. An assessment is something that had to be looked at, gather information, such as interviewing the people who provided the Papadopoulos information, checking their own databases, the databases of other intelligence agencies, and the standard kinds of things that you would do in an investigation like this.
All right, again, that's former special counsel John Durham testifying on Capitol Hill today in an open session of Congress. He did have a closed-door session yesterday. And our guest is Doug Burns, former chief of the criminal division for the Department of Justice, former federal prosecutor. Now, Doug Burns, we're continuing on this thread here, and I don't want to repeat anything we've already discussed, but I feel like so many people look at this and they wash their hands. And earlier we had James O'Keefe on, and he said something about people just being content in their dissatisfaction with the system per se. So they go, who cares? It's crook A or crook B. But I want, like, you're an insider, right? And nobody's going to fire you because you don't work there anymore. Why do these things happen?
Well, no, I mean, right now, there's two problems here. Number one, I've said to you a number of times that, traditional criminal law, which is what I've been engaged in for decades, and politics don't really mix. So the point is, I am repeating a point, but it's worth repeating. If you're going to cherry pick something and just, run with it, it's crazy. In court, it's so interesting. The judges really keep you honest. You cannot in court, and this is important, go anywhere near saying the type of stuff that Jerry Nadler was saying today. You would be shot down, rebuked, harshly slammed, etc. Because the point is, the guy was engaging in just completely reckless political rhetoric when discussing a legal matter. So here, what happened, just to translate it for everybody, and you know this because you've been talking about it probably for years, is that, okay, you had some preliminary information. Well, guess what? It wasn't credible. It wasn't true, okay? It's not rocket science. You don't have to be a Harvard law professor, okay? Somebody said, that Donald Trump was urinating with prostitutes in Russia. Okay, fine. Look at it, investigate it, and here's the $1 million point. When you learn that it's not true, then you act accordingly. That's not what happened in this case, Rich. And when you look, obviously, at you talk about powerful, devastating emails. You've got senior Federal Bureau of Investigation officials on the 7th floor saying Trump will not be president. I'll make sure that doesn't happen. That's a senior FBI person. And if I may be a broken record, what's 10 times more troubling is that 50% of the people in this country probably have no idea about that particular fact. And I talk to guys left and right all day long. Cousin of mine who went to Harvard Law School, classmate of mine from the Cornell Law School. And what they do is they just throw overgeneralized, sort of meaningless, cherry-picked one-liners at me. Very
now, these are
frustrating.
Lawyers doing this.
Exactly. Thank you for highlighting that. That's the point. And they turn around and they will say things with the level of intellectual heft to it, like, well, I'm sorry, I just think that Trump's conduct is terrible. I mean, this is a Harvard law graduate. Are you kidding me? No. But so hold on.
You got to do
now
better than that.
We're diagnosing the problem here, which
Right.
is that for some reason in this media cycle we're in, it is like a magic trick. Let me just explain. You've got people who are busy. They're going to work. They're doing this. They're doing that. So they look at media and they just see a one-liner here and there. I do litmus tests all day long. I'll ask a cab driver. I'll ask a doorman. I'll ask a waiter. Anybody. I'll ask them topics of the day and like, no, I didn't really hear about that. Or, yeah, I might have heard something about that. So they know, the point is, those who are driving narratives know that you can really fool a lot of the people a lot of the time is the point. And so when a Jerry Nadler and Adam Schiff had the audacity, are you kidding me? They got hit with a Mack truck. There was no collusion from their knight in shining armor, Bob Mueller. Okay, forget Durham for a moment. Their knight in shining armor, there's no collusion. And today, June 21, 2023, they're doubling down that there was collusion. Are you kidding me?
Right. And yet somebody follows suit on that, and they're like, yeah. Like, I'm just amazed that there's still people behind them when they look over their shoulder, that people still have their back. Folks, we're on with Doug Burns.
It's absolutely remarkable that they can drive these type of narratives and get away with it, essentially, is the point I'm trying to make. So you've had Bob Mueller, you've had the new special counsel, Durham, pointing out that, it really was a political hoax. And I don't mind a political hoax. If you study American history, you have political dirty tricks going back 150 years. But to bring law enforcement into it is just breathtaking. That's amazing.
How do we stop it from happening? Because, again, from my perch, I look and I say, this is not exclusive to Merrick Garland, but he's definitely not doing anything to prevent it. And it almost seems like he's very happy to go along with it.
People wiser than I have pointed out over and over again, and Professor Dershowitz has argued very effectively that we really should have sort of two positions, at that high level. One is more like an objective public prosecutor, Rich, and then the other one's more in the nature of the president's sort of advisor, AG. You could have almost like two positions. So to answer your question, after Watergate, there were a lot of things, a lot of statutes were passed, a lot of policies and regulations and stuff. So coming out of this, I'm hoping seriously that we will see some reform, because part of what you were teeing up earlier is the need to reform the FBI.
Yep.
That's the oversight function.
And we'll leave that one for another day. Doug Burns, former chief of the Criminal Division in New York, Department of Justice, retired. Doug Burns, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You bet. All right, folks, more to come straight ahead. New documentary from Cindy Drukier from the Epic Times. You don't want to miss it. We're coming right back. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez, and I wanted to connect very quickly with Cindy Drukier. She's a distinguished film director. She's just got a documentary that's out, journalist, editor, and producer. You've seen her on television. She hosts NTD News' The Nation Speaks. That's on Epic TV. She's hosted numerous other programs. She has involvement with various award-winning documentaries, including the Holocaust film Finding Manny, which my buddy Stephen Baldwin was involved with as well. And she's just terrific. And this includes the perspective and experiences of survivors, including her own father. And you can also check out Finding Manny on Epic TV. Cindy Drukier, welcome.
Thank you, Rich. Glad to be here.
My pleasure. Thanks for staying up late. I know that you're out of New York, and it's 11:30 at night in New York, and we love to do late night radio here because there's so many people out there that are busy during the day doing work and don't get to hear about all the great things you're doing. So let's talk about your documentary. I know that, pardon me, it was selected for one of the big film festivals here in the city, the 2023 Festival of Cinema in New York City. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, let's talk about this, because the film, this current film, the latest one, this one is called The Unseen Crisis. And I want you to tell us why you chose that namesake and what people can expect to see.
Sure. So The Unseen Crisis, it's about people who stood up, got their COVID-19 vaccine, as they were encouraged to do, and then had really horrible outcomes. So some people actually, people already know that there's, myocarditis. That's actually something, the FDA and CDC have admitted to, and some blood clotting and, anaphylaxis, Guillain-Barré. Okay, those are things they've admitted to, but 80% of the people who have a bad reaction to the vaccine, it's actually a neurological reaction. And they have a strange constellation of symptoms, which are pretty consistent, but not easily recognizable when they go to the emergency room. So the unseen crisis has a few different elements to it. One is the fact that it's just not being acknowledged and recognized. And the CDC, FDA, NIH, they know about it, but they have yet to acknowledge it and say this is a real problem. And, tell doctors in emergency rooms, hey, this could be a problem people have after the vaccine. This is how you test for it. Here's what to look for. Here's how you treat it. And because they're not doing that, when people go to the emergency room, the doctors do what they expect to be the normal tests and MRI and x-rays and things, and it doesn't show anything. But these people are really, really sick. And they end up getting a diagnosis that they're crazy. And then that goes on their record when they go into the next emergency room. Wow. It's like, oh, this is a crazy person. And it's only because they're not acknowledging it. So this is part of the unseen crisis, right? These poor people are being told they're crazy instead of getting treatment. And the horrible thing about it is they know that early treatment is the key to reversing the impacts and having a much better chance of recovery. And the longer it goes, like there's two people in the film who are in wheelchairs with feeding tubes now because they never got diagnosed and they never got treatment. So that's part of what's being the unseen. Also, when these people, try to talk about vaccine injury, bad impacts of the vaccine online, to this day, they're still censored. So, they're censored from social media. They've, had, support groups that have been taken down. They've had, no end of trouble just communicating. They've figured out ways to communicate in code just to find each other and, share what they've learned about how to get treatment and that kind of thing. And then there's another layer to it too. The doctors, who've come forward during COVID, some of them, came forward with other treatment protocols instead of, early treatment. Right. And then they moved on to treating recognizing vaccine injury, looking into it and trying to figure out how to treat it and give these people some help. And, they get censored, they get their licenses threatened, they get fired from their jobs. So there's a lot of different levels to it. And another level actually is that there's a lot of people who don't even know that strange new health problems they've had started when they got the vaccine and can probably be attributed to the vaccine. So there's a whole swath of the population that probably has vaccine injury, probably has the impact from the, the spike protein that they don't even realize. So that's also unseen.
Wow. Folks, we're on with Cindy Drukier. She's a host on NTD News, and she's the producer of the documentary film, The Unseen Crisis. And straight ahead, I want to find out the inspiration behind the documentary and how you kind of diced up all of the complexity that goes into this, because you just rattled off, 3 or 4 significant areas from doctors to underreported vaccine injuries to the cover-up and media censorship of it as well. So I want to pull on each of those threads when we return. Cindy is with us until the top of the hour. Don't go anywhere. I am Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The virus stops with every vaccinated person.
In other words, you become a dead end to the virus.
Vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick.
I never knew that was going to be the last time I'd talk to my son.
They know at a very intimate level what's going on with this. They know all of it.
And yet, nobody's coming to the rescue of truth.
All right, that is from the new documentary by Cindy Drukier, The Unseen Crisis. You could find that on Epic TV. Cindy Drukier, listening to that, very dramatic, production values sound terrific. What was the inspiration to focus this documentary on those unique areas that you kind of mentioned right before the break, which were, the impact of the vaccine injuries? And it seems like nobody else is talking about it. What made you decide to pick up the mantle and have that conversation?
Yeah, I think that you just hit it on the head because people aren't talking about it. I mean, you mentioned my show, The Nation Speaks Ahead. So from fairly early on in the vaccine rollout, I started to see reports, things on social media about people who are vaccine injured. And I started to interview people, and I interviewed several. And their stories were completely shocking because these are people, especially people early on were early adopters. 2 people in the film were actually in trials, people, these are frontline workers, people who believed in it. Yeah, one was a 12-year-old girl, Maddie DeGarry. She was in the Pfizer trial. She's now in a wheelchair to this day with a feeding tube, and nobody will acknowledge what happened. And the same day she got her second shot, she started to, she had reactions, and like that landed her in the emergency room. Completely tragic stuff. A dad whose 16-year-old son died of myocarditis 5 days after getting his shot. Really tragic things. And I interviewed, I interviewed several people, and actually an early one was after Senator Ron Johnson, who's also in the film. He's the only member of Congress who's, really been looking into this and trying to give voice and, get to the bottom of what's going on. So I just realized that, nobody is talking about it. It's, still completely censored. We put just the trailer on YouTube, it was gone instantly. So that's still the level of censorship. And these people, it's completely, to me, it was just unconscionable that as a society, we would do this. Because there's not a single drug in your medicine cabinet that doesn't have warning labels on it, right? It isn't good for everyone. Don't take it.
You can't even buy a beer or a cigarette without a warning label.
Exactly. So why is this the one drug that was developed very quickly, with all kinds of, issues associated with that this is good for 100% of people? Doesn't matter the age. They don't know the long-term impact. Nobody can. There hasn't been the long-term yet. And everyone was supposed to take it, without exception. How does that make sense? And then these people who actually stood up and got their shot and, are living still with the consequences, they're ignored and not allowed to tell their stories. And so I thought it's not even enough just to share the stories, but to actually go to their homes and see how it's impacting daily life, how it's impacted their whole families, how it's turned their worlds upside down is, going to be a lot more powerful. But an interesting thing I learned, and I mean, there's so many facets. I mentioned a couple of them, before the break, but on an inspirational note, these people are amazing. Like, I met
Right.
some of the most incredible people, and the community of people that is kind of built around this. As you know, one person, Bree Dresden, who started an organization to raise money, you know, to help people with their medical bills, because most of what, you know, the treatments they're seeking are not covered by insurance, and it's, you know, tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know, she said, it doesn't matter, you know, what, if you're conservative or liberal or what you are, you come to this group, you're like, I'm very sick. I might be dying. I need help. And everyone just rallies around. And it's just this incredible group. And it's exactly what I experienced. So, you know, there's some inspiration here too. You know, if the system isn't going to help and is discarded these people, well, we're just going to do it ourselves. And they're getting it done. And here's a good data point for that. So the Act 19 that Brianne Dresden co-founded to raise money, 100% of all the money they raise goes to pay for vaccine-injured medical bills. They have dispersed $500,000. You know how much the federal government has dispersed in helping people in compensation? I think it's $8,400 or $8,600 to 4 people, period.
Wow.
That's it. And, you know, there's tens of thousands. We have no idea how many people are out there suffering. I'm sure a lot of people don't even know that, you know, they're vaccine injured.
Unbelievable. Folks, we're on with Cindy Drukier. She's with NTD News, the Epoch Times, and she is the producer of this new documentary, The Unseen Crisis. And this is something that I think is really interesting because you're a journalist, right? I know you professionally. I know your work on Epoch TV. This is not your forte per se, right? You're not an expert on vaccines or vaccine injury. This is just a new beat that you're covering. And I think it's important to note that because you're not an activist pro or anti-vaccination. This is really just you following the news, right?
Yeah, 100%. I am absolutely not an expert in any of this. I don't have any medical background. I've learned a lot, you know, going through this. But yeah, and everything in the film is like people's personal stories and then data from the government or Pfizer. Like there's nothing in here that's speculative, not documented. There's nothing tinfoil hat in here. This is just like straight up, you know, what I found, and everything is, it's just journalism, right? As you said. And to me, the shocking thing was that this wasn't being covered. You know, the pandemic affected all of us. They were telling everybody to get the shot. This is definitely, you know, human interest stories, definitely relevant to every audience everywhere. And yet it wasn't a story. How is that possible?
100%. Folks, stick with us. We're on with Cindy Drukier. We're going to let you know how you can watch the film. And if you have any questions for her about the film, feel free. This is your time. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. We are on with Cindy Drukier from NTD News, the Epoch Times. She's the producer of the new film, The Unseen Crisis. And this documentary talks about lots of things with respect to vaccine injuries. Cindy Drukier, in the few minutes we have remaining, I wanted to get your take on what you feel is the most shocking revelation from the reports that came out not too long ago that the source of COVID-19 was a potential lab leak.
Well, I would say not too shocking to us. I think in April 2020, we made a documentary on the origins of COVID-19 and pointed directly at the Wuhan lab. Everything all along has pointed to the lab, not to the wet market, if you know you looked at things carefully. But just like the vaccine injury, that was taboo to talk about. It was censored to talk about. And now, that it's becoming an unavoidable conclusion. Okay, you can talk about it. But yeah, there was just reporting recently by some investigative journalists, not us, and I haven't verified it myself, but Matt Taibbi and others who do, Michael Schellenberger, do great work. And they have, it looks like the original patients were 3 scientists who worked in that lab, including a scientist named Ben Hur, who is like the number 2 to the bat lady, and he was the one working most closely with this gain of function research with coronaviruses. That's a very close cousin to the one that got out. So yeah, it looks like that might be the smoking gun to where the evidence has been pointing all along.
Fascinating, isn't it? How many talked about this, and there were even some doctors in China that talked about it, and then they kind of stopped talking because nobody could find them. But now that this is the case, and it's known by many, including like former directors of the CDC, Robert Redfield and others, have agreed that this is likely the source. What's your response to critics that would label you or anybody else saying, "No, this lab leak, you're not following the facts. This is just you being a conspiracy theorist"?
Yeah, it seems with every conspiracy theory, as you say, just wait a few months, wait 6 months. Right. If you were following the actual evidence and the facts, then if they lead you somewhere, that's what you have to talk about. Nobody was making stuff up out of thin air when they said that. If you actually looked at the evidence that was being presented, objectively, you would probably come to the same conclusion. So, and we've learned this lesson over and over again. It's the same thing with the vaccines. Australia, they just, they're not giving them, vaccines to under 5-year-olds anymore. And, in Europe, they stopped giving it to young people. Like, the evidence is there for all of these things. Most things that are, labeled conspiracy theories actually have pretty logical reasons why people are espousing them. And, that's the case with the lab leak. Same thing with the vaccines.
Now, let's talk about how people can see the film, The Unseen Crisis. If people are intrigued and they want to check this out and see the film, share it with somebody, what do they have to do?
Yeah, the easiest way to find it is to go to unseencrisis.com. So it's actually on FBUC TV, as you mentioned. But if you go to unseencrisis.com, it'll take you directly there. If you're an Epoch Times subscriber, you'll get it for free. And if not, it's just $4, and you'll get the film plus 4 weeks of all of Epoch Times, Epoch TV, all our documentaries, our shows, everything. So it's a pretty good deal for just $4.
Now, what do they get for $4? What does all that include? What shows? What's that package look like?
Yeah, so if Epoch, so there's Epoch Times, which is the newspaper website, which has hundreds of articles a day. We cover everything to do with COVID very heavily, lots of things. Great site if you haven't been there. All great political coverage. And Epoch TV, which is our streaming platform. We've got one great show called American Thought Leaders. The host is actually the executive producer of the film. All right, Yanni Kellick, also my husband.
Good man.
We've got about a good man. Maybe 20 or more show. We've got, talk shows and culture shows and a whole bunch of film on there. There's Epoch Cinema. So there's a lot of things that you'll get access to. Crossroads with Joshua Phillips, another great show of ours. So yeah, there's a lot of great content. I think if you're not a subscriber after 4 weeks, probably you'd want to become a permanent subscriber.
All right, that's epoch.tv, epoch.tv. Cindy Drukier, thank you for being with us tonight and sharing all of this great info. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. Thanks, Rich. Have a good night.
You're welcome, Cindy. Take care. My best to Jan. All right, folks, more to come straight ahead. We're going to continue with Open Phone America, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337. We're coming right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, and that's Rich Valdez on all of the social media, Valdez with an S at the end, by the way. And our phone number, if you want to join us, this is the time to do it. Open Phone America is a long time-tested tradition here on this program, and you're welcome to join us. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Now, there's been a lot of talk about this submarine that's been missing for a few days. I haven't really gotten into it because I was hoping that something would happen and we'd hear, it's been found. But it's still not found. Rescue hopes for missing Titanic submarine hinge on a new banging sound that they're trying to find with only hours left with respect to the amount of oxygen they're calculating is available on board. This is the Ocean Gate Expedition submersible with 5 on board, including British billionaire Hamish Harding. So, as we know more, we'll bring you more, but I just think it's interesting. Like, man, you got all the money in the world, and you decide, I'm going to go on a little expedition here. And you go on this submarine to see what's going on. Can we find the Titanic? Let's see what's down below there. And then it itself goes missing. And it's very unfortunate, it really is. But that's what it is. And I just can't help but think, I've heard some critics saying, oh, look, you play with fire, you're going to get burnt. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that because, come on. People like to do things. They like excursions. They like different things. What are you going to do? Fault everybody for trying something new, for doing... I don't think it's fair to say, like, if you meet your maker, it's on you, it's your fault. No, I think it was an unfortunate incident. It's not something that we can necessarily blame on any one person per se, or, oneself for deciding to check it out. Anyway, the crew searching for the missing sub has been hearing banging sounds every 30 minutes and for hours. Throughout the day today on Wednesday. This has been going on since yesterday, and they've deployed additional sonar devices. So I guess wherever this thing is downed or stuck or whatever, they're trying, at least it seems that way, they're trying to communicate with whoever the rescuers are with this banging sound. At least that would be my supposition. They're just, hoping they can find it in time. And the U.S. Coast Guard has clarified that they don't know the source of the noise. The ship is called the Titan, and the CEO and founder of Ocean Gate Expedition, Stockton Rush, is also, excuse me, let me rephrase here. The CEO and founder of Ocean Gate Expeditions, Stockton Rush, is on the submarine along with the British billionaire Hamish Harding, French diver Paul-Henri Narjolet. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but we use the French pronunciation here. And Pakistani businessman Shahzada Dawood and his 19-year-old son Suleiman Dawood. Mr. Dawood's sister Sabrina Dawood told Sky News that the Dawood family is solely focused on the rescue of her brother and nephew and are hopeful for their safe return. So it stinks, but the watercraft submerged on Sunday morning from its support vessel to travel to the Titanic wreckage, which is at a depth of 12,500 feet. And that's about an hour and 45 minutes when it lost any communication with the surface ship known as the Polar Prince. So that's what we know. That's what we've known for the last couple of days. We'll see what's going on. Some say that this thing is scheduled to run out of air today, lamentably. This is a 22-foot submarine, what they call it, submersible, operated by Ocean Gate Expeditions. And this thing costs $250,000 per person. And like I said, I haven't really talked about this because I think it's a sad story. And not only is it a sad story, but it's one of those things where, what do I know? I've never been on a submarine before. I went snorkeling once, and I was like, man, that's enough for me. You know, I wouldn't do this. This is a little bit out of my comfort zone, way too out of my comfort zone. But I want to know if you would. If you would, give me a call. Let me know what your thoughts on this are. I'm curious to see where the country's at on a topic like this, because I don't know. Would you do it? Would you not do it? What's the craziest thing you've done, right? In terms of, you know, going on a submarine. I think that's pretty crazy. If you've ever been on a submarine other than your military service, and even if you've been in the military, give me a call. I'd love to know what your experience was like, because I've got nothing on this one. This is, it's hard to do the play-by-play on something you've just never been a part of. Anyway, your calls and more are coming up. Plus, I want to get into a couple of things. We also have a, hold on, bear with me. A bunch of crazy things are happening. A massive prison riot killed dozens of women at a prison in Honduras. Meanwhile, a huge explosion and fire has injured dozens of people in Paris. What is going on in the world tonight? And, of course, Adam Schiff was censured by the House of Representatives for his false allegations on President Trump during the Russian collusion investigation. That's just a few of the things that are going on. Another one I want to talk about, this is a good one. I'd like to know your thoughts on this as well. Elon Musk says that cis, CIS, and cisgender are considered slurs on Twitter. I agree with that, but what say you? Anyway, your calls and more straight ahead. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. Going to your calls and more as we continue straight till 1 a.m. I'm here to keep you company. And our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Ohio, check in with my buddy Paul, listening online. And just a reminder for everybody who's listening online or hasn't been to the website, make sure you check it out, Rich Valdez, AmericaAtNight.com, Rich Valdez, AmericaAtNight.com. This website, you can stream the program live. You could not only listen live, you could listen to archived shows. If you like to listen to the podcast, which is, you know, a replay of the show that's delivered daily, you can do that as well and subscribe to it so you get notifications every time a brand new podcast episode of the radio show is live. Plus, there's This Is America, my separate podcast that's only 40 minutes. That is a not a deep dive, but it hits a few different topics very quickly. Usually no guests, just commentary. Sometimes I'll bring in a guest though, or I'll repeat something because I think it's important. Either way, I want you to check it out. Rich Valdez, AmericaAtNight.com. Now let's check in with Paul in Zanesville, Ohio. Paul, go ahead.
Hey, Rich, I'd just like for everybody to say a prayer for those guys that are down there, because 12,500 feet, that's a long way down. They could have got snagged up on anything, and they have only got enough oxygen till the morning. So it's not looking good, in my opinion, Rich. you know. And I wanted to ask you something.
Yeah.
Why can't the justice system, like the Supreme Court justices and so forth, why can't they expedite, all these whistleblowers and everything saying, I have the evidence. Why can't they say, because this is very important, this is our president and our vice president and everything, or former president. Why can't they say, I want to see that evidence, I want to hear that evidence within the next 2 months, give them due process? And if they don't give you that evidence, can't they be held in contempt or something? Because you're
Well, see, here's the thing. I understand your frustration, and here's what happens, at least from my understanding of it. What we're hearing right now are all political accusations, right? There's no crime. Matter of fact, if anything, the FBI, who is the group, right, or the entity here that could actually, investigate and then arrest people, they're the ones that have the quote unquote evidence of the alleged bribery, right? So they're the ones holding on to it, saying we don't want to show you, or we'll show you, but you've got to come to our office, that type of thing. Now, they finally did agree to give it up and showed it to Grassley, but there's mention of audio recordings, and they're saying they don't even know if those exist. So my point is, there is no criminal charge right now on anybody for this, for this particular $5 million. This is the House providing oversight, bringing this to the attention of the American people. So the Supreme Court being the last stop on the bus, when it comes to a constitutional question or a constitutional issue in the law, they're not going to be the first ones, and they're not going to volunteer themselves because they're not law enforcement per se. They're just there to interpret the Constitution. So that's where it becomes kind of mired, where we feel like, man, we're seeing all of this stuff, but this isn't a court of law. This is Congress. So what typically Congress would do is make a criminal referral to the Department of Justice so that they could go ahead and charge them with a crime. But again, we've seen that happen. Special Counsel Durham, Mueller, etc. It's very difficult to charge anybody with a crime if, unless their name is Trump, right? If their name is Trump, then it's easy to charge them, and you can get all sorts of indictments and get all sorts of charges filed. But otherwise, it doesn't seem to be happening that way, based on what I'm seeing, Paul.
So if you have a rogue FBI, you're up the creek.
Exactly. It's funny. This was the example that I used to make on the radio. I remember following the 2020 election, people telling me, but, they've gone to court. And I would say, if you go to, because, again, I worked in Manhattan. If you get robbed in New York City, most people aren't going to go to the police department, right, to a precinct and say to the desk sergeant, hey, I was just robbed. And the reason they're not going to do it is because it makes no sense to, right? It's not like they're going to say, oh, Mr. So-and-so, we're so sorry that happened to you. Let me deal with you very quickly and introduce you to our sergeant of detectives, the chief of our detective bureau. We're going to assign detective so-and-so, and we're going to get to the bottom of this very quickly and arrest the culprit. Lamentably, that's not what happens. In New York City, they take a number. Maybe we'll get to you now. Maybe we'll get to you later, if anything at all. And no detective is going to be assigned, and it's not going to happen. So, I often used to tell people, if you get robbed in New York City and you just don't go, or if you go to the desk sergeant and they're like, hey, come back later because I'm busy, it doesn't mean your crime didn't happen. It just means they didn't record it. And lamentably, that's how it is. So it's kind of like here where you're saying, if we have a rogue FBI, are we up the creek? Yeah, we totally are. Because when you have the guys that aren't rogue, or who are going rogue, let's just say the whistleblowers saying, look, I don't want to play with you guys anymore. I don't want to do things this way. This is wrong. We're seeing them pull the resources off of the Hunter Biden investigation on tax fraud. And voila, here we are today with two very minimal crimes that he's being charged with. So I think we have the whistleblowers that have said what they've said. And, a few people came to their aid, their defense, supported them. But it wasn't like any charges were filed or made. This was just correcting the public record.
Okay, Rich. Well, it's like the old saying goes, show me the money, or show me the evidence, I guess.
Right. I'm
Always
with
nice
you,
talking
brother.
to you, Rich.
Likewise, Paul. Thank you. And I wish that wasn't the case, right? I wish we actually had a better handle on things where bad guys are held accountable and they pay the price. But it doesn't seem that way just yet, or anymore. I don't know, whichever phrase you want to go with. Let us continue. Let's go to Kim in Shields, Michigan, listening on KDKA online. Go right ahead, Kim.
Hi, Rich. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What I wanted to talk about is I'm glad they're censoring Adam Schiff, but I still think that when they took that vote a couple weeks ago, the Adam Schiff's phony investigation cost the taxpayers $32 million, and they want and Lauren Boebert wanted to censor him for $16 million, for half the cost of that 3.5-year phony investigation that was all lies, and Thomas Massie wouldn't go along with it, and that's a real disappointment. I think that they should have socked him with that. What do you think?
Well, here's the thing. I think we can't change the rules just because we don't like the players, right? So when it comes to serving in Congress, whether it's Congresswoman Kim or Congressman Rich Valdez, the rules are that under the speech and debate clause, all the members of Congress have qualified immunity, right? So they get to go in there and be robust in their work and do, in good faith. They have to do this job and do it well. And the reason they do that is because they know that they're not going to be held to any standard. Like, if this thing doesn't fly right, you're going to be on the hook for $16 million, right? So while one side of that coin, it's like, oh, then they could act with impunity. And the other side of that coin is, well, I mean, if I'm going to get hung out to dry here for $16 million, I'm not even going to bother investigating. Nobody's ever done anything, right? It goes back to like that theory where it's too steep of a penalty to do the right thing, so I just won't do anything. And I think that's where we are. So I don't want to see Adam Schiff on the hook for the money. I'd like Adam Schiff to be censured, which he was today. And if there were any crimes committed, he should pay the price for those crimes that he committed, whatever they may be, whether it was, fraud or this or that or whatever. In this case, he lied to the American people. And I don't know how you could quantify that, but I would say that, if they went beyond censure and were able to get him expelled, that would probably send a really good message to other members of Congress to tell the truth when they're asked. And that's kind of where I'm at, Kim.
Yeah, and I wanted to say I really like James O'Keefe, too. I love his investigation.
Oh, he's terrific. Yeah, I worked with O'Keefe. I ran the national part of his company. It was a nonprofit for 2014 and 2015. And it was an excellent time. We did a lot of great work together. Thank you, Kim. I appreciate you. Godspeed to you. We're coming right back, folks. Open Phone America, your calls and more. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
900 miles east of Massachusetts, Canadian air crews continue to drop sonar buoys and report hearing unusual noise in the water both yesterday and today. Planes, ships, and drones are now aggressively searching a grid near the sunken Titanic. But so far, nothing. The Navy now reviewing all sonar contacts.
Can you describe what the noise sounds like that they're hearing?
The noises have been described as banging noises, but again, they have to put the whole picture together in context, and they have to eliminate potential man-made sources other than the Titan.
Underwater acoustics experts caution the ocean is noisy. Heavy ship traffic, even fish and whales can sound like tapping. But the noise also means hope that the 5 men on board the sub are still alive, trying to communicate.
All right, that's NBC News with the report. And this is, again, big story. I'd never heard of this happening before, of a sub going down. I'm sure it has. Just hasn't happened while I've been looking. And I haven't seen it get so much traction. But when it's the dog days of summer, that's what happens. And I guess it's not technically summer yet, right? Or is today the first day of summer? Anybody? Somebody check that? Yes. Summer now. Look at that. All right. It's summer now. So, yeah, when it's the dog days of summer, sometimes you don't have enough to report on. And stories like this become a big deal. But I'm curious to know, would you do this type of thing? Let's go to the phones. 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Arnold calling from Manitoba. Arnold, welcome. You're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Hi. Hello.
Yes, sir. You're live on the radio right now.
Hi. Who can I talk to?
What is this, like a cruel joke? What are you looking for, a delivery, or did you call to talk on the radio? What's going on?
I'm talking why they don't attach a strong 1-inch cable when they let this submarine down into the ocean.
I'm thinking it's because it's 12,000 feet, or a little more than that, and I don't think that they have cable that goes for 12,000 feet. I could be wrong. I don't know. Have you done this type of work before?
Are we on the radio station now?
Live, 6.5 million people are listening to you, Arnold.
Well, that's all right. That's all right. Okay. Ships can carry thousands of tons. Why don't they have cable on there? It would take a phenomenal roll of cable, let's say 1 inch, to let it down on with a cable attached to the submarine for safety.
But my question to you is, can they attach 12,000 feet of cable?
Of course they can.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I didn't know that was a thing. That seems like a lot of feet.
These ships, well, that's only 3 miles of cable. Hey, these ships are so massive. Look what they can carry. Army tanks and jetliners and whatever.
Well, point well taken. I don't know anything about that. It sounds like you know a lot more about it than I do. So we're going to let them know at the submersible company that they need to be using cable. Thank you, Arnold from Manitoba. I didn't even know we were playing in Manitoba, so I appreciate you listening. And thanks for letting me give you a hard time. I appreciate it. Thanks for your call. Let us continue. Let's talk with Bill on KUGR in Green River, Wyoming. Go right ahead, Bill.
Hi, Rich. Back in the early 60s, a couple of Frenchmen got together and built this thing called the Trieste. And they took it down to 6.7 miles in the Mariana Trench into the Challenger Deep. And, hey, this was a private entity. It wasn't the government or anything. But the thing is, after they did that, we lost the USS Treacher, which was our first nuclear submarine, while it was out doing diving trials, and suddenly it went down. We couldn't understand it, so they used the Trieste to go out there and actually investigate what took the Treacher down, and they couldn't find it with anything that the Navy had. They had to use this privately made bath escape, as they called it, to go out and find the USS Treasure. And after they had done that, the United States Navy bought this from the Frenchmen and proceeded to use it for themselves. And it finally wound up going to the Woods Oceanographic Institute out there in California. and got retired into a museum. They took pieces of it and used it on a Trieste 2, which was outperformed the Trieste original. But this thing, like I said, went down to 6.7 miles. This thing that they're looking for is down around 2.1. So it's a step backwards from the technology that the people in the French came up with back in the early 60s. So if they can't find something that can go down to 2.1 miles and find this thing, they're not trying very hard.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Are they really looking for this group of people, or did they want them to disappear? I don't know. I don't know any about this. Again, I find the whole story rather interesting. I'll use that word for lack of many other words, because again, I'm pretty sure this happens all the time. If you have a tour company that does this and they go down there all the time, what went wrong this time? Was it because you had all these bigwigs on there? Are there always bigwigs on these things? I have so many questions about this, and I don't know anything about it. I don't know if you can attach a cable that's 2 or 3 miles long. I don't know how any of this stuff works, but it's fascinating to me that, similar has happened in the past, and we were able to get to the bottom of it, so to speak, and we're not able to do that this time. Bill in Green River, New York, I appreciate it. And let me ask you, what's your take on all the political stuff that happened today with the former special counsel, John Durham?
You're asking me?
Yes, sir. Bill on
okay,
KUGR.
Well, I really... quite frankly, ignore this, because this government is as corrupt as any government that's ever been on the planet, all the way from the bottom to the top.
Yeah,
we're dealing with criminals. Disagree. Dealing with criminals. It's a gigantic RICO operation.
Yeah,
so
well
if we
put.
don't treat it like a gigantic RICO operation, we may as well just bend over and kiss ourselves goodbye.
Now, you're in Green River. Do you guys miss Liz Cheney?
I don't know anybody that missed her, but the bottom line is that a lot of people don't know what a complete idiot she made herself out of when she first got here. She and her husband, whose name she never uses, flew in from Virginia and flew into the Jackson Hole International Airport. Amazingly enough, it is an international airport. And then they got themselves a car and went up into Wilson and bought themselves a multi-million-dollar mansion. And then she went down to the only sporting goods store in Teton Village, which is where Jackson Hole ski area is. And she signed up for a resident fishing license in Wyoming. The only problem was that she wasn't qualified to get a resident fishing license in Wyoming because she hadn't been here for the 365 days that she had to continuously be here to qualify as a resident. Mind you, this woman is an attorney. Okay, so if an attorney does paperwork without reading it, the attorney can't be very bright. In any case, she wound up getting routed to the U.S. magistrate in Jackson, where she got to explain her perjury. And basically, if you and I had done this, we gone straight to federal prison. Okay,
right?
Because she committed a felony. She committed a felony in front of a whole bunch of witnesses. Okay, but all she had to do was pay a $600 fine and say she wouldn't do it again, and got her wrist slapped and went off. Well, her plan had been to run against Mike Enzi for his Senate seat. Well, she and Daddy just got together and decided, well, this might not be a good idea to continue with this political campaign after what you've done and made a fool of yourself. International fool. This story was covered internationally. You can still find it on the internet. Anyway, they gave it a couple of years for the people in Wyoming to forget, which is typical. I mean, you give anybody a couple of years to forget a politician acting like a jackass, it's probably going to happen. So after 2 years, instead of trying for NC seat, which wasn't available any longer, then she went in and basically took the seat for Lummis. and that's how she got her House seat. And
wow.
The rest, as they say, is history.
That is a great history. You might be in the running for the resident historian here on America at Night. We have another great caller that currently holds that title. But, Bill, that was terrific. Your Wyoming history is on point. I appreciate the call. And big shout out to everybody on KUGR in Green River, Wyoming. Godspeed, Bill.
Take care.
Yes, sir. All right, folks. We're going to continue with your calls and more straight ahead. 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Rich Valdez, who, again, will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
In addition to being forced to give up our awards and our titles and our opportunities, the NCAA forced me and my female swimmers to share a locker room with Thomas, a 6'4", 22-year-old male equipped with and exposing male genitalia. Let me be clear about this. We were not forewarned we would be sharing a locker room. No one asked for our consent, and we did not give our consent. And I'll set the scene. A swimming locker room is not a place of modesty. You're undressing, you're fully exposed, and we were forced to take off our swimsuit in front of a man who was doing the exact same thing. If nothing else, I truly hope how you can see this as a violation of our right to privacy and how some of us have felt uncomfortable, embarrassed, and even traumatized by this experience.
That was Riley Gaines, former college swimmer that was testifying on Capitol Hill today. And there's a Gallup poll. It just came out recently. I spoke about it recently. I just want to circle back on it. Americans strongly oppose allowing biological males to join girls' sports. This new Gallup poll reveals that the American public strongly opposes allowing transgender females or biological males who transition to female to compete in women's and girls' sporting events. 69% say trans athletes should only be allowed to compete on teams that match their birth gender, and 26% say that athletes should be permitted to play on teams of their new gender identity. Now, the way that's worded, I'm going to go with that and say I agree too. If you are a biological male that identifies as a female, then I think you should be competing against other biological males that believe that they are female, right? That to me, like a trans league, I think that's the answer here. The poll showed that opposition has grown over the last 2 years to trans athletes playing on teams of their new gender. Meanwhile, the case of 4 female athletes who sued the state of Connecticut over its policy of allowing transgender athletes to compete according to their gender identity and not their biological sex was again heard on June 6th by the Second Circuit Court of Appeals in New York City, where a 3-judge panel dismissed the lawsuit last December. So these 4 Connecticut residents who ran high school track are all represented by the Alliance Defending Freedom, or the ADF. And here's a quote. Like the district court, we are unpersuaded with respect to the claim for an injunction to alter records that plaintiffs have established the injury in fact and redressability requirements for standing. both fail for reasons of speculation, and that was their reasoning when this went to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, or the Second Circuit Court, excuse me, and that was their initial ruling. So we'll see exactly what happens here. But the poll remains the same. Nearly 70% of Americans oppose the idea of biological males playing against biological females. And that makes all the sense in the world to me. But I don't know. What do I know, right? I don't know anything about this stuff. But I want to get to your calls. Let us go to the phones. 833-482-5337. Now, I want to go to Albany, New York, calling from Talk 1300 WGDJ. Linda. Let's get Linda on hold so we can get her on the phone. Linda from Albany, New York. Go right ahead.
Yes. I'm wondering, with so many important people on that ship that's missing, why they didn't have a second one just go along with them to have security purposes in case something went wrong.
Yeah, I'm guessing probably like the same, if you're on a private jet with 5 or 6 important people, I'm pretty sure they don't have another private jet right behind it with ancillary people for X, Y, and Z. I think most people, get up in the morning and we don't expect to get hit by a car or to get struck by lightning or for anything like that to happen. And I'm guessing if you've got, the courage to get on a submarine, because I think it requires some courage. Maybe some do it without thinking, but I know for me, I wouldn't just go on a submarine, especially not that far down. I think, what happens if this thing malfunctions? Can I swim 12,000 feet back to the top? I think not. I don't think I can do that. So I probably wouldn't put myself in that scenario. But I could see why people do it. They just, hey, yeah, let's do that. Let's go see the Titanic. Let's do what we got to do. Anyway, Linda, thank you for the call. I appreciate that. Big shout out to everybody in New York. And we're coming right back to your calls and more. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Valdez here with you till 1 a.m. It's almost that time, Eastern time, New York time. Let's go to Angelo from Reading, Pennsylvania, WEEU. Go right ahead.
Yes. With all the technology and money that went into this submarine, why couldn't they afford, like the airplanes, that they have a black box so that they could be located in case anything did happen?
Yeah. Well, the black box on the airplane doesn't usually locate them. It just tells them what went wrong, has a snapshot of the computer, and it does. As far as I know, these ships do have something called a voyage data recorder. Of course, it's not going to tell them where it is. They're going to have to find the submarine first in order to retrieve the black box. And if they could find a submarine, we wouldn't have this problem to begin with. But I get your point. The problem with this is that it's gone too far underwater. And submarines are, kind of designed to be stealth, right? They're typically painted black, and they blend into the darkness of the sea, in particular the saltwater, which also adds to their anonymity because it prevents the sonar of ships from picking up the actual submarine being there. So, yeah, they probably do have a black box known as a voyage data recorder, but who knows where this ship is right now. Thank you for the call, Angelo. I appreciate it. Take care, good night, and God bless. We'll do it again tomorrow. Hasta la próxima.